Hey, and welcome to another episode of the Leadership Liner Notes podcast with Sean Gaylor. Thanks for tuning in. I'm so glad you're here. I'm under the weather. I was just sharing this with my guest here. I got that summer cold. So if hopefully I won't start coughing in the middle of this, but if I do, Laura, just take over. Just
I
just
got you. I got you.
just go for it. So anyway, I'm really pleased to have Dr. Laura K. Spencer. Look at me with the official full title here.
Ooh.
Um, but she is someone that is passionate about developing leaders in an ever-changing world, a world where we are in constant shifts. She is known for the mindset and the ethos, which we're going to get into, known as read the terrain. She's a speaker. She's a future author. Maybe we'll get into we'll talk a little bit about the book, but most importantly, the thing that I've kind of vibed off of in Laura in our pre-interview or pre-podcast conversation, and even in the stuff that she's putting on TikTok and LinkedIn, that Laura really gets what it means to be human in the gig of leadership. Laura, welcome to Leadership Liner Notes. I'm so glad that you're here, my friend.
Stoked to be here. It's definitely a pleasure. And Beatles fan, so excited. Let's
That's
let's have this
that's
whole conversation. Let's do this
okay.
thing.
Real quick. What last Beatles song you listened to?
It's so funny. I was talking to my husband the other day, and he's younger, so he had not heard a lot. So we went through a lot of the music, and we did the whole Yellow Submarine album, and I'm trying to remember and Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. He was like, "What? What is this song?" So teaching him the things.
Very, very nice. What a wonderful trip into all that stuff. I love anytime when I meet somebody who's like a first time Beatles listener,
Mhm.
which the older I get, it seems to be more and more folks. Uh, kind of like, man, I wish I could relive what it was like to hear this song for the first time or this album for the first time. So I totally dig that. Since I
There's
put you on the
there's a whole
spot.
leadership lesson with the Beatles. I probably need to write an essay on it. It's funny because I was thinking about it while you were going. I was thinking, when you look at Lennon and McCartney and how much friction they had in their styles, right? Better music came out because of that, because they were able to kind of riff off each other. I think if Lennon had just been like, "Hey, I want to do this thing," and McCartney was always like, "Yeah, like yes, man, yes," right? I don't think they would have the music that they have. And it's funny because I even asked my mom something about, "Hey, John likes this type of Beatles song. Are there others like it?" And my mom said, "The thing about the Beatles is everything was so different because of that like tension and that riff
Mhm.
between them." So I didn't mean to cut you off, but it just made me think, I have a blog entry in the future about this. I was thinking about that. So.
You just might, and it hit me as you're saying that, because so often in leadership we talk about consensus,
Mhm.
and we it's and that can, and there's kind of pros for that, but then the cons for that sometimes kind of devolve into groupthink, and
Mhm.
and that can be very, very dangerous, and sometimes that tension is healthy. That dissent is healthy. So whereas Lennon and McCartney, very much equals and very much were in competition with each other. Sometimes an idea would creep up that McCartney would say, "Well, man, I didn't even think about that
Mhm.
to begin with."
Mhm.
I'm glad John shared that with me, and vice
Right.
versa. But in leadership, sometimes we struggle with navigating through that dissent and understanding when dissent can be healthy, right?
I think it's fear. And this goes to really a lot of my work is most leaders are promoted because they're good at a skill,
Hmm.
right? There was something like, I was a classroom teacher. I was in one of the first one-to-one take-home programs in the nation, did a lot of innovative things. So then it made sense that I would become like an instructional technology coordinator. I was good at a skill. Doesn't mean I'm good at leading people, right? I did not go to school to lead people. I went to school to teach English and to do innovative things, and then I'm in charge of this. So as I'm navigating becoming a leader, it's a very scary world out there. And I felt like I had to be perfect and everything I did, had to just go the way it was supposed to go. And so I think what happens a lot of times is we're just afraid to open the door to that dissension because we think that means we're not a good leader, when actually that's what makes us better. And I've seen that in some leaders. If I ask a question as a leader, do I sit back and give you a true chance to share? Or do I jump in with my answer and then say, what do you all think? And you see both sides of that. And a lot of people say, oh, that person's just so controlling. And I think, I don't know if they're controlling in the sense of I have to be in control, or if they're controlling because they're afraid that lack of control signals poor leadership. When in reality, it's not even a lack of control, but it's sharing that moment could actually make for better things in the future. And I mean that's really the crux of my work, is trying to be grounded in leaders or people. We too are struggling, right? I have that fear of being, called out for not knowing something, or should I be here? Did I deserve this? And all of those pieces. And so, but how do we navigate that in a way that doesn't diminish our role and doesn't diminish the people under us, is a big part of that work, right? There were four people in the Beatles. So was it always the Paul and John show? No, there were times
Mhm.
that George wrote songs, that Ringo wrote songs, right? So is there opportunities in my world that other people can also step up and be the leader, that I'm comfortable saying, I don't know, Sean, why don't you tell us what you think, or show us how you would like to solve this problem? Sounds great, go do it. Or am I going to say, no, it has to be mine because I'm the leader?
Yeah. There is something to be said about how, and if you look at, like the Get Back documentary, which I have devoured uh, all 20 hours of that or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm,
backwards and forwards. And, I, wrote a book about it at one point about the Beatles as collaborators and innovators. But
mm-hmm,
there is something to be said, like, even though John, quote unquote, was the leader, when you see them recording music, even if it was a George song or a Ringo song or a Paul song, everyone was expected and invited to contribute, and any idea that was submitted was heard and valued. And in some cases, it may not be my idea, but man, Laura, your idea, it's not about me. It's about
mm-hmm,
making the song better, or making the groove better, or the band better.
mm-hmm. But there's vulnerability there and there's
Mhm.
trust there. And you can't take for granted that that's going to happen, right? That's the work. You have to build those opportunities. If four of us just go in a room right now and I say, here's what I'm thinking with this song, here's how I want it played, and I just hire these musicians, would they be willing to say, actually, I have this better idea? Maybe not. And so that's the work of leaders, is to build the conditions to allow that to happen. And I just, again, you don't get trained on that. Like when I went to educational administration master's program, right? I wanted to be a site leader. I need to go get this master's program. What did they train me in? They trained me in budget. They trained me in HR. They trained me in like building, maintenance and things you have to be considerate of. They trained me in like how to make a schedule. I don't remember ever having, and here's how to be a leader, or here's how to inspire trust or inspire change, right? We talked about organizations going through change. Never. It was so black and white, because those are the things you can grade. Those are the things you can look
Yeah.
at and check off and say, Laura knows which line item paper falls under for the copy machine, right? So therefore she must make a good site principal. Okay, here we go.
That's so true. And there's a lot of things that I often say, they didn't teach me this in principal school, and most of
Right.
that is the human centeredness of
Mm-hmm.
leadership, and
Mm-hmm.
and many of us learn that lesson the hard way. I used to think
Yeah.
I could jeans day my way through
Right.
culture, that I could cupcake my way,
Yeah.
or order Little Debbie snack cakes for everybody. And yeah,
Yeah.
those things
Mm-hmm.
have a time and a place, and a
Sure.
function, and they are valuable. But there's so much more. And I think one of the things that I appreciate in following your work, and as one English teacher to another, is the image of read the terrain. And I would just love for you to unpack that image and connect it to the work that you're doing with
Sure,
leadership.
sure. Go on a journey with me.
Yeah,
So, take it back to COVID. So during COVID, trying to find a way to stay connected with friends, right, in ways that was safe. Fell in love with paddleboarding and had my little inflatable paddleboard and we go paddleboarding and then I decided all the cool kids had hard paddleboards and I wanted one too and I did not have a vehicle that I could, put one on my roof.
sure.
So started car shopping. I'm very much a new car girl, I want the latest and greatest and my husband is the opposite. He loves, the old trucks and such. And so decided to buy an old Land Rover and bought this 1997 red Range Rover, which is the main breed, and got my paddleboard and went off paddleboarding. And then found that there was this Rover Club that you could join, and I thought, well, that's kind of cool because I don't understand this car at all. It's very quirky. It's constantly needs to be worked on. Join the Rover Club, and they said we're doing this event up in Big Bear. You should come with us, go off roading. And so, we went, and my husband would drive. This is his world. He grew up in East County, San Diego, where they do that type of thing. I'm a city girl, so this was all new to me, and just started like taking it out and doing things, and really started falling in love with that idea of being away from technology, which is that's my world. So being forced to disconnect, being forced to engage in nature and do different things. So started doing that, but the crux of it was when I finally became the driver, right? So for years I was the passenger. I sat in the passenger seat. I watched. I was very passive. I enjoyed. I break open the chips for snack time and do those things, but I wasn't driving. And when I finally took the wheel, I realized how much goes into this world, right? That it's not just we drive, that there's so much involved. And so that was the impetus to read the train because what I realized is what you experience is so different, not only behind the wheel, but when you're outside. So a lot of times you get up to this spot and you think like, I don't know how my vehicle is going to get through this. There's a rut in the middle, like which tire is going to
Mhm.
balance where. And my husband would say, we get out and we walk it. We get out and we walk it. We get out and we walk it. And so I learned that you can't trust the map. You got to know your vehicle, but you also have to know where you are. And I have favorite trails and I could do the same trail every year and it's different, right? I know the trail in terms of I know I'm going to go a half mile down here and there's going to be this left that I want to take to go into this canyon, but the obstacles are different every year. The rain has changed it. The animals have changed it.
Yes.
The side-by-side drivers have changed it, right? There's geology, earthquakes, all these things happen. And so it's that constant awareness. And then it's that relationship between me, this vehicle, especially this old vehicle that is spitting out oil and lights and different things, and the terrain. And I have to become like one with all of it and be in that moment, or we're not going to have success. And I've blown it many times. Now, I mean, luckily, I now have two rovers and they both function, but I've been two wheels up in the air where people were like screaming, like, you're about to flip down a mountain if you don't stop and listen to what we're saying to you, right? Because I've
Right.
been too much pride and took myself in a spot I couldn't go, or gotten stuck in something that was a little bit too hard for me, or scratched at the side because it was too narrow and I didn't get out and look and see if I could actually do it. So that became the impetus to leadership is you can buy the perfect vehicle, right? Everybody's going out and buying these $100,000 vehicles right now. There's a new
Mhm.
Defender that's gorgeous. There's, all these things. Sure. But if you don't know how to drive it and if you're not aware of your environment, it doesn't matter, right?
Mm.
You're just going to find yourself stuck in a rut. You're going to find yourself with a snapped axle and you're going to take people where they shouldn't go. I've led people down trails they shouldn't have been down where we've broken things, and so you have to figure it out. And it's the same thing with leadership. I mean, honestly, like running a trail is leadership. And how do we make it all work? So that became that lens through which I started looking at leadership. And honestly, there's a lot of time to think when you're driving too, because you're not usually cranking out tunes or being aware. So you're just in your thoughts. And so, a lot of it would connect back to what has this taught me about leadership? From that spawned the Instagram, and then I started, blogging and making those connections. I just finished a book. I was, I just you're the first. Now it's out in the universe because I just said that out loud. finished the book on Friday, figuring out the publishing, and it's that connection of what have I learned off-roading and how does that connect to leadership? And where do we go from here? And how do we make sure we're always reading the terrain? Even if I talk to you today and I assume this is how you like to be treated, in a month, something might happen in your life and it might change, right? In a month, you might say, I have a sick family member and I don't need you, just coming at me with what needs to be done. I need a different response, right? I need you to read the terrain every single time I interact with you and make sure that we're still good
Hmm.
where we need to be good or make adjustments based on where we need to make adjustments. And a lot of people just take for granted that I looked at the map, I put it in my Apple Maps, the little blue dot says I go here, and I just go there, right? Well, there's an accident on the road. It's going to not get you there when you thought you were going to get there. There's so many elements to it that we just don't think about anymore.
It's such a beautiful image, and again, I'm echoing back to what we said off camera, kind of an example I shared with you
Mm-hmm.
about how a really powerful moment, teachable moment was lost because what I observed, in my opinion, with the leaders in question, they didn't read the terrain, they didn't walk the terrain, they didn't know that there was terrain to be read, and
There's a map.
there was a map. It just and people associated with this kind of misstep had a very visceral response to
Mm-hmm.
that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and you mentioned a key word in all of this, vulnerability,
Mm-hmm.
early in our conversation. Why the hell? And I'm no perfect leader because I think the older I get and the older I've been in leadership, the more willing that I am to be vulnerable and to say, man, I really screwed this up, or I have no idea what I'm talking about right now, or man, I'm really scared about what I'm getting ready to share with you all, or whatever it is, or this isn't easy for me. Why do we struggle with vulnerability? With all of the technology, all of the platforms, and all. Why is that? Why is that such a deficit, or why is that missing? It's not a deficit; it's a strength, I think. But why is it missing?
We are taught from an early age that there is a right answer. School taught us that.
Hmm.
Right? When you're young, you ask a million questions and you go out and explore and you make mud pies and you do all the things. And then as you go through school, you start losing that and you're taught that there's a right answer. This is how I'm supposed to do this. This is how I pass the math test. This is how I write the essay. This is how I do the things. And I'm not blaming school, but I think that's indicative of how many of us were raised, right? Is kind of very algorithmic. I was also in the GATE program, right? So I have a little PTSD from having to be perfect in that program as well, which I think a lot of our generation of leaders were probably part of one of those types of programs.
Sure.
So then, we have this need to get the right answer, to do it right. And then, we kind of take that with us. And I think you add in today on top of just that piece of schooling, influencer culture, photoshopping, like all these pieces that are brought to us as perfection, right? Instead of raw. Like you and I had talked about the difference between like a very edited podcast where you'll take out my ums and such versus this is Laura and she babbled and I'm putting it out there. That's the difference, right? What are you portraying and are you willing to say, actually, they photoshopped the cellulite off my legs in that picture, but like, here's what I really look like. And I think as more people start to show that side, you'll start to see a shift in that working. I mentioned my Instagram. I had signed up for this Yap challenge, and it's 40 days, and every day you have to like riff on video, and you don't always have to post. She says it's about reps more than perfection. It's just getting comfortable being on camera.
Hmm.
But the reason that this type of reel or TikTok is becoming powerful, I think, is because it's more vulnerable. It's you talking. It's not B-roll footage of you sitting on a beach with a pina colada or, leading the perfect meeting and saying, look at all my, subordinates agreeing with my perfect plan. It's just, here's my thought for today. Here's what I'm thinking. And you're putting it out in the universe. And I think more people are connecting because they're like, oh, you're human. Like I need this. Give me more of this, right? And we're starting to push against the same. We're pushing against screens, going back to paper, right? There's just this massive rebellion, I think, against perfect. And yet as leaders, you're going to lose your job, right? You're not tenured. You have these other fears. You have, reports to the state, and you have the board, or depending on, if you're corporate or education, doesn't matter. So you're trying to maintain it all because nobody's ever told you it's okay to be vulnerable in front of your people too. Like, we are human. We make mistakes. We have stressors. There's things I have to do that I don't want to do. There's things I want to do that I don't get to do. And I just think all of that just compiles into, like, you just freeze. You're just
Yeah,
right. And then we don't know because there's no mentorship. There's nobody to tell us it's okay. And that's
that's
where we land.
true. We have to we've got to normalize and the gig, so to speak,
Hmm.
and we normalize that by, as naturally and authentically as it comes, to just call those things out,
Hmm.
and to share that, and to be willing to share, and you have to be careful with that too.
Of course, you can
Um,
overshare for sure.
yeah, and
Right. Hmm.
there are some folks out there that in my estimation, okay, I probably didn't need all that information. Um, um, I mean, and perhaps
Yeah.
people
Oh,
are,
yeah.
look at my little social media thing and, okay, really, do we need to see you spin that record, one more time?
Yes.
Yeah, you
Yes, we
do.
do.
Yeah, you do. It's, you can keep scrolling, or you don't need to follow me. So,
But
with,
as leaders, don't you need, like, but you need somebody to share that with, right?
yeah,
So I was talking to a young green leader the other day, right? Super stressed out. There's saying, we have a summer school program. There's a lot going on, and she's trying to figure it all out. She's amazing. She's going to be an amazing leader. She's brand new, right? When you're stressed, where does that stress bubble go,
yeah.
right? It can't go down. It comes up. So when you're stressed, you're going to call me, right? And I'm going to help you through that moment. So you're going to be vulnerable up with me. We're going to talk it through. And then you're going to, like, take kind of a little bubble of confidence down to your team and say, we've got a lot going on right now.
Hmm.
Let's figure this out. Right. Let's move forward together. A lot of people don't ever get that person, right? They're just like, a lot of people are hired and just trying to hold it all in. Like, right. I'm stressed. I'm panicked. If I say something, they're going to say I shouldn't have been promoted. Maybe I'm going to lose this position.
Hmm.
It rolls to the staff. We become micromanagers or control freaks, right? Because we're trying to, like, control the chaos in our own mind by
Yep.
controlling the chaos around us. And then it all implodes. When I was an early leader, the superintendent called me in. I had, oh my gosh, John, it was so bad. I had rolled out this project. I wanted every teacher to have a website. Early days of websites, right? 2006. Every
Been
teacher's
there.
going to have a website. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be the greatest thing on the planet. You'll see, right? And the teachers thought I was out of my mind. They
Yeah.
had bigger issues going on that campus than building a website that had little graphics, of a duck walking across the page or whatever. And I just kept pushing, right? No, but I said this was going to happen, and I'm a new leader, so I have to make it happen. And I just didn't read the terrain. I didn't read that they had bigger things to worry about. Some of them didn't even know how to reply to an email, right? And I'm pushing this thing. Superintendent calls me into the office.
Love
I just
that.
appreciate his honesty, but I'm like, oh, I messed up. Two
Yeah.
things he said to me. One, Laura, don't you ever use the word mandated again. Don't do it. Not a good word. Take it out of your vocabulary. You set the room on fire the second you did that, right?
Yep.
That was mistake number one. But then what I loved is he pulled the rubber band out of his desk and he said, look, you want us here to stretch the rubber band. Like, he's like, you want us here. He's like, and chances are we'll get there. He said, but we'll get there a lot easier if you do little tugs, little
Yeah.
tugs, little tugs. The rubber band will stretch with you. But if you do this, Laura, it might break.
Break.
And that's and make it work, right? He's like, the rubber band has lost its integrity. Little stretches, Laura. Little stretches, Laura. That was like that vulnerability as a new leader that nobody was letting me share in a way. If somebody had just been a voice and I had said, I screwed up, this isn't working, somebody else might have said, it's okay, Laura. We'll back up. We'll do it. We'll do the teachers who want to do it right now. We'll do the rest in a few months. We'll try again. We got these other problems, but I didn't have it. And so I just held it all. So I'm guessing somebody called the superintendent and complained, right?
Yeah.
But I'm glad they did. Even though I wasn't in that moment, right? Felt like going to the principal's office. But I'm so glad they did because honestly, I also think maybe they had a little bit of faith in me. Like, hey, if somebody just steps in, maybe she'll be okay. Right? Maybe we'll save her from herself. But I don't know. If he hadn't done that, I don't know where I'd be sitting today because I probably would have completely bombed that. And I don't know that I would have gained that trust back in a way that let me stay there for so many more years and do a lot of really cool things. Ended up doing a one-to-one rollout there, right? Like, but I wouldn't have if I kept pushing those silly little websites.
Wow, that's a great anecdote, and I love the image your superintendent used of the rubber band because
Mm-hmm.
again, getting back to tension and dissent as we talked about Lennon and McCartney earlier,
Mm-hmm.
some of that it's good. Now we don't want
Mm-hmm.
full blown like we're gonna you're gonna do these websites overnight or you're gonna make Sergeant Pepper tonight or else you know
Right, right.
but kind of like some of that tension causes
Mm-hmm.
growth, some of that friction causes reflection and okay, how can I adapt, how can I grow from that, but it also requires a leader that is in touch with the terrain and in touch with the people with whom they serve.
Mm-hmm.
We talk a lot about different stories and different images. And like I said, I really appreciate the analogy of reading the terrain, and because you can
Mm-hmm.
just look at it from so many different levels. What inspires you? What are those things? You mentioned paddle boarding. So what are those things that you do as a leader to kind of take care of your humanity and keep you inspired?
Turn it off. It sounds so silly to say, but what's made me a better leader is realizing that I'm not a leader 24/7.
Amen.
I wish if I could just tattoo that on like the forehead of everybody that becomes a leader is you cannot lead 24/7. It's that old put the oxygen mask on yourself first, right? Paddleboarding, off-roading, sitting by the fire pit in our backyard is critical. Like when you're dealing with productive struggle or you're handling a situation, the learning happens during the reflection. And if you're constantly putting out fires and being responsive, you're never taking the moment to learn and reflect and grow and rejuvenate and
Mhm.
refresh your brain. So I pride myself on saying, I tell my team, hey, I'm turning off my laptop and closing the lid right now. Are you doing the same? Right? I'm going off-roading. You will not be able to get a hold of me until Sunday evening. Maybe I might have some moments where I have a signal, but I'm out, right? And I think that's the biggest piece is, a lot of people want to be like, oh, I read these 10 leadership books last week and I'm listening to 20 podcasts and I'm doing these things, but I'm like, yeah, sure, but not all the time. I also just read fiction books, right? I watched Project Hail Mary the other day and now I want to go buy the book and read the book. And like, I just don't always have to be proving that I'm a good leader by being a leader.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I do that keeps me grounded is to just not do things.
That's so. I wish I had that message tattooed. I wish you had tattooed that on this bald head, 16 years ago when
Hmm.
I became a principal, because I, man, that's where I misstepped and ended up with two emergency room visits and all those things because I
Hmm.
thought I had to be the $6 million man
Hmm.
24 freaking 7. And
Yeah.
what happened along the way was I was fraying my nervous system. And oh my
Hmm.
God, wait, so
Hmm.
they're reading the latest
Hmm.
Malcolm Gladwell. I love Malcolm Gladwell or the
Yeah.
Heath brothers.
Yeah.
I got to get that book,
Sure.
and
Hmm.
or else I'm not good, and I remember
Hmm.
early on, one of my daughters um, called me out on reading a leadership, but they still do, all three of them. Like, all right,
Hmm.
Put the Simon Sinek away, Dad. Are you reading a Beatles book? Are you reading,
Right. Right.
fluff? Are you reading
Mm-hmm.
that Jack Reacher novel? Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's so important because at the end of the day, the building, the wherever you've pitched your tent was there before you. It's going to be
And
there
it will be there after you.
after you,
I
and
I
those,
tell my team,
yeah.
nobody will love you as much as you love yourself.
Amen, sister.
Right?
Amen.
I lost a job. I think that's when it fully hit me. I gave everything to this one job that I thought was critical for my career. And I read every leadership, like that was the time, right, where I was like keeping up with the Joneses. I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to work 24/7.
Yeah.
Gave my soul to this place.
Mm.
And what did they give me back? We decided to go a different direction. And in that moment when you're like, I gave you everything, right? And you get that, here's your, it's not even a pink slip, right? But here's your, thanks for the memories. Peace out. Um, it's just it's not worth it. And it's not to say I'm not going to give everything in terms of you get the best of me. You hire me, you get the best of me. You hire me as a speaker, you get the if you're watching this because you want to hire me, you'll get the best of me for sure.
Yeah.
But you don't get the best of me at 2 in the morning, and you don't get the best of me, Saturday at 7 p.m. because you've decided that there's an emergency. Yes, sometimes there are emergencies, but 99% of the time they're not. And if you truly want the best of me, you give me those times.
Mm. Damn, that's a rewindable moment right there. We talk about on NPR, like, the driveway moments, and but like often on the podcast, they'll go like, y'all, that's a rewindable moment. If I had like an AI, avatar, like rewind, Laura, just drop, mic drop, like because that's so true. If you want, yeah, I've got the strength, the gift, the skill, the
Hmm.
resource that you require to get the job done. But in order to get the best part of that, you've got to just know part of the deal is I'm working on the best part of me. I'm working on those
Hmm.
things that help me function and flow, whether it is off-roading, whether it is,
Hmm.
crate digging through some Goodwill looking for
Hmm.
some obscure Rolling
hmm
Stones record or whatever it is, or just watching Hannah Montana, with my daughters,
hmm
they're all older now, but if
That
they
was a
want
good
to watch
show.
Hannah Montana, I would, the world would stop, and you're not gonna.
Hmm.
They get the best of me, and I think that's
But
important.
how many of us gave up relationships at certain points for this world, for this role?
Yep,
And how many times did my daughter have a track meet and I brought my laptop out? And granted, track is boring. It's like 6 hours and she'd run for 30 seconds, right? So I felt justified. But um, there was a lot of moments where I wasn't present because I was consumed. And if I'm giving up those relationships and that's crumbling, right? My relationship with my daughter's crumbling, my relationship with my husband is like, on the edge. I can't bring you my best anyway, right? Because I've got that mess. So I'm going home to stress, right? I'm walking into office to stress. It doesn't work. Like I used to commute to this job. There's this job that let me go. I used to commute for an hour to this job because of traffic in San Diego. And I would listen to talk radio on my way in. And I would be stressed out when I got to work, right? Because the world's falling apart. And, oh my gosh, what's happening? And then I'd go to work and I'd be stressed out because it was a hard job. It wasn't, there's a lot to do and a lot of culture and all the things, right? And then I would go home and I'd listen to a podcast or talk radio and I'd stress out some more. And then I'd walk in the door and I'd be like, dumping work on my family. Work sucked today, and I got this
yep,
and this person, and I don't know if they like me, and I'm trying to figure this out. And so now I'm like dumping on them too. So they're not feeling all of me. And it was like shampoo, rinse, repeat. Who am I here for? I'm not my best me, and I'm not my best anybody to anything. But I think a lot of people think that's the ticket. And I'm here to tell you, it's not the ticket at all, right? It will destroy you and it destroys the people around you. When I got let go from that job, it was probably like a few weeks later, right? I'm like wallowing in self-pity and trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. And
sure.
my husband said, I wish you could have seen how miserable you were.
Mm.
We would rather have you here than the miserable person that you were there.
Mm.
And and then that same summer my best friend passed away and a lot of things shifted and then COVID, right? And I just regroup. We tell students productive struggle is when you learn, but then we don't allow ourselves like that same grace and opportunity, right? We just stay in it and we don't do the reflection and we don't, that's the hard part. The hard part is the learning.
Mm.
And if we just stay in the struggle, we never get the learning. I'm done with it. I'm off that. That's not on my map. That's not the train I'm willing to read
Man.
anymore. Like, peace out. That's not for me.
Amen. And you're right because I'm guilty of that too. And I say this to as somebody right now where I have three adult daughters. They're all out of the
Mm-hmm.
house.
Mm-hmm.
And you look back and you go, where has the time gone? And then you realize, and then you start kind of keeping score on yourself. At least I do, in terms
Mm-hmm.
of, man, I was there, but I wasn't there. I brought that damn laptop, or I kept
Mm-hmm.
doing the cell phone mambo, right? The invisible cell
Mm-hmm.
phone,
Yeah.
where nobody knows I'm,
Mm-hmm.
back
Yeah.
channeling or whatever it is, or texting, or I'm writing this memo, or I'm
I'm gonna run to the
responding to.
restroom real quick, but I'm really taking a call, right?
Yep, done that move. And what happens is even though you are at the track meet, the dance recital, the soccer game,
Mm-hmm.
you're there physically, but you're not there, and you miss it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
those of you that are tuning in, my God, put the phone away, put the laptop away. It's okay to do that because it goes
Mm-hmm.
so fast. And I actually I had to go to each of my daughters, probably within the last, just recently, because I've been reflecting, I'm in therapy and all this
Mm-hmm.
stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
coming to terms with some things. And I had to tell them. I said, I love you and I'm so proud of you. But there were many times at the dance recital, at the soccer game, prom
Mm-hmm.
pictures, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that I was not there. I put the
Mm-hmm.
title. No, yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
put the title
Mm-hmm.
before you all.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I regret it. I'm sorry,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to do better. And
Yeah.
and I did that. I didn't do that as an individual. No, I didn't do that as a group thing. I did that
Yeah.
individually. And I had to have that
Yeah.
conversation three different times in three different ways. But to your point, the word consumed. And
Mm-hmm.
leadership, yes, there are things that are marvelous and great about influencing and inspiring others to be the best versions of themselves, and to accomplish impossible tasks, and to
Mm-hmm.
do those things. It's not for everybody, but we have to be mindful of consumption, uh,
Yeah.
consumption of the title, consumption of the gig. It's so, so
It's
true,
a
Laura.
consumption culture too. So
Damn,
you have to fight it, fight it, fight it, fight it. Yeah, both my daughters are adults. They're both Navy officers, so they're also in leadership. And I'm like, break the cycle, right? I broke some, they're breaking some more. But you're right. I should probably call them after this and apologize too for a lot of the moments that I missed. But I try and tell them too, don't let it consume you.
yeah.
Yeah, that whole work-life balance is a bunch of baloney, right? Balance means it's the same. I don't want it to be the same.
No.
I want life to be a lot heavier in terms of, fulfilling my bucket than work. It's harmony, right? It's finding a way that work feeds life. And I do the work and then I go enjoy the life. But that's not about balance. And we just have to move away from it. That's the work. That's what I do. If you're following me on any social media or anything like that, I try and keep it real. Just tell you
You.
like, here's what I've done, here's what I've learned, and do better. Be better, do better.
Amen. I'll put all of your, for those that are listening or watching, I will put all of the LinkedIn links and TikTok, and definitely follow, read the terrain, and Laura's work. It's so inspiring because it is real, it is vulnerable, and it is. it causes you to kind of stop a little bit. And so definitely subscribe to the newsletter, subscribe to TikTok, and I'm grateful that before we go, a little bit about
Mhm.
the book, Laura. I'm honored that I'm I feel like I've got like this world exclusive. So
I know, a hard
tell us about
launch.
the book, man. Yeah, what's
Sure.
going on?
So finished the draft on Friday. It's actually sent it to a friend to do some editing, but it's called Read the Terrain. The whole idea of the book is that every chapter is something I've done off-roading and how that relates to leadership. So first chapter is the passenger seat, right? What happens when you think you're a leader, but you're just sitting in the passenger seat? You don't actually understand what's happening as a driver, right? So take you through an experience there. And so it's just that relationship between each. But what I enjoyed about writing the book is I'm not just saying, here's what Laura did, here's what Laura, thinks. There's actions in every single chapter of a reflective move for you to take to slow down, to read the terrain. And here's a trail tip. But if you think that you're struggling with certainty, here's the thing to do to help you think through it. Because I'm not the leadership guru, right? I haven't gone to school. I don't have, in terms of like gone to school as like a, this master of leadership, went to school
Yeah,
for
same.
educational administration. So I don't claim to be John Maxwell or Simon Sinek, but what I'm telling you is you have permission to slow down. You have permission to be vulnerable. You have permission to make mistakes. And here's how I've done it. So you'll get a trail, and it doesn't matter if you're not an off-roader. I tried to
I'm
write it
not
in
an
a way that I
off-roader,
think
so
is approachable to everybody. Um, and then making those connections. So 11 experiences, 11 leadership
mm,
opportunities to think and reflect. And then I'm trying to build out like kind of maybe like a workbook companion to it, which will be the next step. But it really is giving you permission to think about what you're doing, to be truthful with yourself, to
mm.
say, maybe I haven't looked at the map, or maybe the map has changed, or maybe I don't understand what the map is telling me. It's okay. We're going to get through this together. You're going to be a better person because of it. And here we go. Right? Hop
Nice.
on in. Let's go for a ride.
I
Mhm.
can't wait for this book to come out, and
Thank you.
when we when the book is published, got to get you back on the podcast,
Sure.
and
Definitely.
frankly, as far as I'm concerned, you got an open invitation for this podcast.
Thank you.
Any
This is
point,
fun.
because it's just been such a
Thank
real
you,
fun
Sean. I
conversation.
know.
I've
I
enjoyed
loved
this.
it.
I
I could be
really
here for
have.
like 5 hours. I'm like, what? We're done? Oh, no.
Yeah, I know. Well, we're just getting started. So,
I know.
um, thank you for tuning in. Well, first, Laura, thank you for being here,
My
and
pleasure.
and thank you for really just inspiring me and making me forget about this horrible summer cold that I have. It's been good medicine for me and for my soul, and I know it's been good medicine for those that have been tuning in. And as I sign off, as I typically do, don't forget to kind of share with the world your dreams, your visions, your ideas, because the world needs them, and you help make the world a better place, just like Laura Spencer. And remember, man, just in the wisdom that Laura dropped, y'all that are tuning in, it's okay to pause. It's okay to just stop, get off road, get off the ride and read the terrain, and to do something for you, to recalibrate, and to do something for the people that love you and that you love. So this is Sean Gaylord with my new friend and bandmate Laura Spencer. Thankful to read the terrain with you on this episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Leadership Liner Notes. Look forward to catching up with you all on the off road and on the flip side.